That night I drafted my response to Apex's lawyers. I'd accept the settlement and public apology. As for consulting, I'd agree under specific conditions: triple my old hourly rate, complete decision-making authority over database corrections, and a direct report to the board, not management. I also demanded they hire back Sarah and 2 other employees they'd wrongly pushed out. The terms were deliberately steep. If they accepted, I'd know they were desperate. They accepted every condition. Within 48 hours I had a signed consulting contract. My first day back at Apex felt bizarre. The building looked the same, but the atmosphere had completely changed. Employees walked around looking shell-shocked. The receptionist who'd ignored me on my final day now smiled nervously. Maria from HR intercepted me in the lobby. "Alex, I want to apologize personally. I should have questioned the termination." I stared at her. "You should have done your job and investigated properly." Her face flushed red. "You're right, I failed." At least she was honest now. Upstairs I was escorted to a temporary office, ironically Dylan's old space. The board had cleared it out after his suspension. I set down my laptop and looked around at the empty shelves. This felt like poetic justice. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Can't believe you're actually here, coffee later?" I smiled. Definitely. The database was worse than I'd imagined. Whoever had implemented Dylan's changes had done sloppy work. Client records were corrupted, billing codes were scrambled, and backup systems had been disabled. "How did you let it get this bad?" I asked the interim CTO during our first meeting. He looked exhausted. Dylan fired anyone who questioned his methods. The people he hired didn't know what they were doing. I spent the first week just assessing the damage. Every layer I uncovered revealed new problems. At one point, I found evidence that Dylan had created fake client accounts to pad the numbers further. The fraud went deeper than anyone had realized. I documented everything meticulously, knowing it would likely be needed for the federal case. Each night I returned to Quantum feeling grateful for my real job. This consulting work was important, but Quantum was my future. Apex was just a chapter I needed to close properly. By the end of my second week, I'd created a comprehensive repair plan. It would take 3 months and require hiring specialists. The board listened to my presentation in stunned silence. "This will cost nearly $2 million to fix," the board chairman said quietly. I nodded. "Dylan's fraud will cost you much more if you don't address it properly. This is your chance to salvage something." One board member, an older woman named Patricia, spoke up. "Why are you helping us, Alex?" "After what we did to you." The room went quiet. Everyone waited for my answer. "Because fixing this is the right thing to do," I said simply. "And because I want everyone to know that the person you fired for attitude was actually the person with integrity." Patricia smiled. "We made a terrible mistake. For what it's worth, we're implementing new oversight policies. This won't happen again." I wanted to believe her. Time would tell. News of my consulting role leaked to the industry press. A tech blog ran a story: "Fired employee returns to save company that wronged her." The article painted me as either incredibly forgiving or extremely savvy. The comments section was split. Some people called me a pushover for helping Apex. Others praised my professionalism. I tried not to read them, but curiosity won. One comment stood out: "This is what real leadership looks like, rising above pettiness to do what's right." That one made me smile. At Quantum, my team threw me a surprise celebration. "To Alex," James toasted, "who shows us that integrity always wins in the end." I felt genuinely touched. These people had my back in ways Apex never did. Sarah pulled me aside. "I heard 3 more people quit Apex this week. They're all applying here." She grinned. "We're building something special, aren't we?" Yes, we absolutely were. A month into the consulting work, federal prosecutors contacted me directly. They wanted me to testify in Dylan's fraud trial. "Your documentation is crucial to our case," the assistant prosecutor explained. "You're the only person who can authenticate the original data." I agreed without hesitation. Dylan had tried to ruin my career for refusing to break the law. Now I'd help ensure he faced consequences. The deposition took 6 hours. Dylan's lawyers tried to paint me as a disgruntled ex-employee with an axe to grind, but the evidence spoke for itself. "Ms. Morgan," Dylan's attorney asked, "isn't it true you stole proprietary data when you left Apex?" Marcus immediately objected. "My client backed up her own work as standard practice. She had every right to protect her intellectual property." The attorney huffed. "So you admit you took company files?" I stayed calm. "I took copies of systems I personally built to protect my work. Those copies proved Apex was committing fraud." The media coverage of Dylan's trial was intense. Financial news outlets covered every detail. My name came up repeatedly as the whistleblower who'd exposed the fraud. Some called me a hero, others called me a traitor to my former employer. I ignored both labels. One evening my phone rang with a blocked number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Alex, it's Dylan." His voice sounded strained and desperate. "Don't hang up, please." I should have disconnected immediately. Instead, curiosity kept me on the line. "What do you want?" My voice was ice. "I want you to know I never meant for things to go this far," he said. "I made mistakes, but you didn't have to destroy everything." Anger flared in my chest. "I didn't destroy anything. You did that yourself when you committed fraud." He was quiet for a moment. "I could have made you rich. We could have been a team." I laughed bitterly. "A team of criminals? No thanks." I hung up and blocked the number. The trial concluded 3 weeks later. Dylan was found guilty on multiple counts of securities fraud, falsifying financial documents, and obstruction of justice. The judge sentenced him to 6 years in federal prison. Apex's board issued a public statement accepting responsibility for failing to prevent the fraud. They announced sweeping changes, including my permanent appointment to an advisory role. I'd continue consulting while working full-time at Quantum. It was unconventional, but both companies agreed to the arrangement. Patricia from the board called personally. "You saved us, Alex. We'll never forget that." I appreciated her words, but I knew the real victory was building a better future at Quantum. Apex had taught me what I didn't want. Quantum showed me what was possible. That night, Jamie took me out for a celebratory dinner. "Look at you," she said, raising her glass. "From fired to federal witness to industry hero." I clinked my glass against hers. I'm just someone who refused to compromise. 6 months after my firing, my life looked completely different. At Quantum, I'd been promoted to Director of Data Systems. My team had grown to 12 people, and we were developing innovative solutions that competitors couldn't match. Sarah had become my Deputy Director. We'd hired 5 more refugees from Apex, building a team culture based on respect and integrity. At Apex, my consulting work was nearly complete. The database systems were repaired, proper oversight was established, and the company was slowly rebuilding trust with clients and investors. Maria from HR had actually become an ally. She'd implemented new whistleblower protections and ethics training. "I learned from our failure with you," she told me during one of my visits. I appreciated her growth, even if it came too late to help me when I'd needed it. One afternoon, I received an email from a college student. "I read about your story in class. You inspired me to major in data ethics," she wrote. That message meant more than any settlement check. The industry awards season brought an unexpected honor. The Technology Ethics Foundation named me their Integrity Award recipient. The ceremony was held at a fancy hotel downtown. I wore my best suit and tried not to feel overwhelmed. When they called my name, I walked to the stage on shaky legs. Looking out at the audience, I saw familiar faces: Jamie, Marcus, Rebecca, Sarah, even Patricia from Apex's board. I took a deep breath. "I didn't set out to be a whistleblower," I began. "I just refused to do something wrong. That decision cost me my job, but it saved my integrity." I talked about the importance of systems that protect people who speak up, about creating workplace cultures where ethics matter more than short-term profits. If my story helps even one person find the courage to say no when asked to compromise, I concluded, then everything I went through was worth it. The standing ovation lasted 2 minutes. I tried not to cry. A year after my firing, Apex's board made one final request. They wanted me to speak at their annual company meeting. "We need our employees to hear your story directly," Patricia explained, "to understand why ethics matter more than expediency." I agreed, but with conditions. I'd tell the truth, all of it. No sugarcoating, no corporate spin. When I stood before 200 Apex employees, I recognized some faces. Others were new hires brought in during the rebuilding. "I'm going to tell you about the day I was fired," I started. I shared everything: Dylan's proposal, my refusal, the sudden termination, the investigation that followed. Some people looked uncomfortable. Good, they should be. "The lesson isn't that whistleblowers always win," I said. "Sometimes speaking up costs everything, but staying silent costs even more: your self-respect, your integrity, your peace of mind." I paused. This company failed me. But more importantly, it failed itself by creating a culture where fraud could flourish. The room was completely silent. After my talk, employees approached me in small groups. Some apologized for not speaking up when I was fired. Others thanked me for exposing the truth. One young analyst, probably fresh out of college, grabbed my hand. "I almost went along with something suspicious last week. After hearing your story, I reported it instead." That conversation made everything worthwhile. Later, Patricia walked me to my car. "You could have destroyed us completely," she said quietly. "Instead, you helped us become better." Why? I thought about her question. Because I wanted to prove that doing the right thing doesn't mean being vindictive, it means being principled. She nodded slowly. "You've changed this company fundamentally. Our culture is different now. People question things, speak up, challenge bad ideas. We shook hands one final time. Thank you for the opportunity to close this chapter properly, I said. She smiled. Thank you for showing us what leadership really looks like. I drove away from Apex for what I knew would be the last time. 2 years after my firing, I sat in Quantum's new headquarters overlooking the city. As Vice President of Data Innovation, I'd helped build something that mattered, a company where people thrived by doing excellent work ethically. Sarah stuck her head in my office. Got a minute, there's someone here to see you. I followed her to the lobby where a nervous woman in her 30s waited. Ms. Morgan, I'm Jennifer from Apex Solutions. Well, former Apex, I just resigned. My stomach tightened. What happened? She pulled out her phone, showing me emails. My manager wanted me to hide a security breach from clients. I refused, and now they're making my life miserable. I saw my younger self in her frightened eyes. Can Quantum help me? She asked desperately. I smiled. Let me introduce you to our hiring manager. We're always looking for people with integrity. As I walked her to HR, I realized my story had come full circle. Apex had tried to break me for having standards. Instead, they'd created someone who could help others stand firm. That was the real victory, not revenge, but building something better and helping others do the same. Sometimes getting fired is the best thing that can happen. It forces you to find where you truly belong.